What if I told you there's a biblical beast so massive it could block out the sun with its wings? I'm talking about a creature so big that when it spreads those wings, entire cities get plunged into darkness, like someone just flipped off the fucking lights. See, most people know about Leviathan, that massive-ass sea serpent that could swallow ships whole. Some have heard whispers about Behemoth, the unstoppable land beast that could level mountains. But there's a third member of this ancient trinity that's been deliberately kept in the shadows. While Leviathan ruled the seas and Behemoth dominated the land, there was something even more terrifying controlling the skies above us: Ziz. Here's what gets me as confused as a nun in a strip club with a VIP pass. Why the hell don't more people know about this creature? I mean, it's mentioned right alongside Leviathan in ancient texts, described in the same breath as these other biblical monsters, yet somehow it's been memory holed from mainstream knowledge. That's not an accident. We're tracking down the most elusive of the biblical beasts. We're going to dig into why this sky monster has been buried, what the ancient texts really say about it, and why governments want to keep this particular beast locked away in forgotten scriptures. Because, trust me, the evidence suggests this big fucker could very well still be out there. If you've been following my channel, you know I'm the guy who digs into the weird shit and makes people uncomfortable. The Scarinator who tracks down cryptids, conspiracy theories, and the kind of biblical mysteries that make both governments and religious institutions squirm like they've got to take a piss after a long drive. Today, we're diving headfirst into some seriously ancient shit that's been deliberately buried for centuries. We're talking about Ziz. And before you ask, no, I'm not talking about the creature from Final Fantasy XI. And it's not a WWE wrestler. This is the forgotten third member of what I call the biblical beast trinity. You've got Leviathan ruling the oceans, Behemoth fucking crushing everything on land, and then there's Ziz, the absolute king of the skies. But here's the shit that I don't understand. While everyone and their grandmother knows about sea monsters and land beasts, hardly anyone talks about the creature that supposedly controls every goddamn thing in the air. This isn't just another cryptid hunt, folks. This is part of my ongoing investigation into creatures that powerful people don't want you thinking too hard about. See, when you start digging around in ancient texts, you realize there's a pattern of suppression. Certain stories get promoted. Certain monsters become household names, but others get quietly shoveled into a metaphorical shithole and covered up. The Ziz is one of those creatures that's been systematically erased from popular consciousness. And that makes me as suspicious as a married woman deleting her search history. Why would religious authorities downplay a creature that's supposed to be just as significant as Leviathan? Why do government agencies classify reports of massive aerial anomalies? And why the fuck do ancient accounts describe this thing in terms that sound less like mythology and more like eyewitness testimony of dark shit that's still out there? In a few minutes, you'll understand why Ziz might be the most dangerous cover-up in biblical history. We're going to explore ancient texts that describe wings so fucking massive they could eclipse the sun. Eggs so huge that dropping one and cracking it open could flood entire cities. The modern sightings that suggest this sky monster's bloodline might still be flapping around up there. You're going to learn about government suppression, religious censorship, and why looking up at the sun makes you have to sneeze. Well, scratch that last thing. So buckle up, because we're about to uncover some serious biblical mysteries that they definitely don't want you knowing about. All right, let's dive into the ancient texts and see what our ancestors really knew about this sky monster. And trust me, when you start reading the original sources, this shit gets wild real quick. Now, most people have heard of the Bible, especially the Old Testament. Genesis, Job, an eye for an eye, all that. But there's another book that most folks outside the Jewish community don't even know exists, and that's where Ziz really spreads its wings. I'm talking about the Talmud. So, quick crash course. The Talmud is basically one of the most important texts in Judaism. Think of it like a giant ancient discussion board, a massive multi-volume collection of rabbi debates, religious laws, ethics, stories, commentary, and yeah, straight up monster lore. It's made up of two parts: the Mishnah, which is the written version of Jewish oral law, and the Gemara, which is the commentary on that law. Although it's thousands of pages long and was written over hundreds of years, most of what we know about Ziz is buried in there, in the old school rabbinical arguments and fucked up footnotes that most people never read. And according to the Talmud, the Ziz isn't just some oversized bird. It's the ruler of the skies. Like if every bird on Earth had to vote for a king, Ziz wins in a landslide. This thing was created by God alongside two other primordial beasts, Leviathan for the sea and Behemoth for the land. The idea was that these three monsters would maintain cosmic balance. Each one ruled a domain, and nobody messed with their turf. The rabbis didn't give a vague description of Ziz either. This wasn't some poetic metaphor bird shit. They said its wings were so wide that when it stretched them out, it could eclipse the sun. Entire cities would go dark just from this bird cruising overhead. One passage even says Ziz's wings could stretch from one end of the earth to the other. No exaggeration. That's not a bird. That's a natural disaster with feathers. According to ancient Jewish creation myths, these three beasts were each given 1/3 of the world to rule. They weren't just creatures. They were part of the cosmic operating system. And apparently, when the end of the world rolls around, they're all supposed to be killed and served as a feast for the righteous. I'm not making that shit up. That's in the text. A doomsday buffet where the main course is primordial monster, beef, chicken, or fish. Sounds insane, but also kind of badass. I wonder if Ziz tastes like chicken. Now here's where the conspiracy kicks in. Leviathan and Behemoth both get name dropped in the Bible. They show up in the book of Job. They get painted into Sunday school stories. And they've even made it into movies. But Ziz got canceled harder than a Netflix original. Barely any mention in the Bible itself. And no cartoons or sermon shoutouts. Banished to the mythical sidelines. Brutal. So, what the fuck happened? Some scholars think the idea of a sky monster was too much for early religious institutions to deal with. A sea beast? Scary, but it stays in the water. A land beast? Intimidating, but you can avoid it. But a beast that rules the sky? The place people look when they pray? That's harder to ignore. A monster in the heavens? That hits too close to home. You can't hide from that. You live under it. And that's what makes Ziz different. This isn't just mythology. It's a piece of ancient theology that reads like an eyewitness report. The descriptions are detailed, consistent, and way too over the fucking top to be symbolic. These were people trying to explain real shit, something they saw or at least genuinely believed existed. And if that's the case, then maybe Ziz isn't a forgotten legend. Maybe it's just a missing page from history, one that's still gliding around way above our heads. Let's shift from scriptures to the scribes, from the holy texts to the old manuscripts, legends, and records that somehow slipped through the cracks. Because it turns out Ziz didn't just show up in religious texts. Hell no. It left claw marks all over human history. Let's start in the medieval era, when people were drawing crazy, weird shit in books for a living. Some of these manuscripts, especially Jewish, Islamic, and Christian texts, depict massive birds with wings so wide they stretch across the horizon, looming above tiny cities. Some even show these creatures blotting out the sun, with people scared shitless, cowering in the shadows. Now, they didn't always call it Ziz by name, but the imagery matches the old descriptions exactly. And let's be honest, back then, you didn't waste ink and parchment drawing something unless it either scared the hell out of you or meant something sacred. Sometimes both. And it wasn't just European scribes sketching these shit shows. Over in Persia, Mesopotamia, and the Levant, ancient art displays these terrifying winged beasts perched above battlefields, palaces, and temples. Some show divine beings riding on or fighting against sky creatures with outstretched wings, talons the size of chariots, and eyes like fire. In many of these depictions, the creature represents judgment or divine wrath, often tied directly to heavenly punishment or apocalypse. Wait, that sounds familiar. But here's where things start getting as spicy as a bachelor party in Vegas with zero supervision and one angry llama. All across world mythology, you'll find stories of griffin, thunderbirds, and giant birds of prey that ruled the heavens. The thunderbird in Native American legend? That fucker is said to create thunder with its wings and shoot lightning from its eyes. In Africa, there are the tales of the Kongamato, a massive flying creature with leathery wings and a nasty habit of attacking riverboats. Over in Southeast Asia, there are ancient carvings of Garuda, a massive divine bird creature who could blot out the sun. And if you stack up all these legends next to each other, the similarities get real unsettling. Like they're all describing different versions of the same goddamn thing. Now, let's talk about the wild shit mainstream science likes to awkwardly pretend doesn't exist. There are archaeological discoveries out there that don't fit into the nice, tidy little boxes we're taught in school. I'm talking about giant bird bones, way too damn big for any known species, that have been found not just in one place, but on multiple continents. In South America, there have been reports of wing bones from creatures with estimated wingspans of over 30 fucking feet. In the Middle East, there are stories, some well documented, of enormous talon marks carved into cliff faces with no known explanation. None. And sure, every time this evidence pops up, somebody rushes in with a perfectly reasonable explanation, like fossil deformation or prehistoric terror birds. But those birds don't have the wingspans. They didn't match the timelines, and they sure as hell weren't supposed to show up in religious artworks or prophetic texts. It feels a lot more like the experts are scrambling to shut the lid on something that they don't really want to explain. You ever notice how when a mystery gets too weird, scientists stop investigating, throw their hands up in the air and just label it legend or cultural symbolism? That's not science. That's like breaking up via PowerPoint. Lazy, dramatic, and full of bullshit slides. So here's what we've got. Ancient artwork from multiple different cultures showing massive sky beasts. Religious illustrations of birds that could eclipse the sun. Eyewitness accounts from history describing flying creatures fucking big enough to snatch livestock or people. And archaeological finds that don't match anything living today, but get swept under the rug with a shrug and a smirk. All of it points to one direction. Whatever Ziz was or is, it left behind one hell of a trail. And either people from vastly different cultures across the world all hallucinated the same shit for thousands of years, or something real was flying around up there. Something huge, something powerful, and something we were never meant to talk about again. But we are talking about it right fucking now. And hang on tight, because this rabbit hole only gets deeper from here.
Damit wir diese böse Leute.
Alright, now we're getting into the fucked up part. And yeah, that's saying something considering we just talked about a bird that can block out the sun. Because while Ziz might feel like some ancient footnote buried in religious scrolls and dusty artwork, there are way too many modern sky creature sightings that match its description for us to just fucking brush it off as folklore. Let's start with the Thunderbird, the legendary beast from Native American mythology. These weren't just bedtime stories. Tribes like the Lakota, Ojibwe, and Algonquin all told stories of a massive bird with wings that stretched across the sky. This flying nightmare could cause thunder by flapping, lightning from its eyes, and storms just by flying overhead. Now, here's the ass kicker. Modern sightings of thunderbirds are still happening. Ranchers in Texas and New Mexico, hikers in Pennsylvania and Montana. Even commercial pilots have reported massive bird-shaped shadows passing over their aircraft, only to be told by air traffic control that nothing was on radar. One guy in Alaska swore he saw a bird with a wingspan as wide as a commercial jet just fucking coasting silently through the twilight sky. It wasn't flapping, it was just gliding, majestic and terrifying. No fucks given. All these accounts line up eerily well with ancient descriptions of Ziz, specifically the Bar Yushnai, which is basically Ziz in full beast mode. According to the Talmud, this version of the Ziz laid eggs so massive they weren't just oversized jumbo, they were catastrophic. One egg, according to the lore, fell from the sky, cracked open, and flooded 60 cities. What? As if that wasn't enough biblical chaos, in the same sentence, it says it destroyed 300 cedar trees from just the impact. If you've never seen a cedar tree, they don't snap like twigs. These are massive, solid, old-growth forest titans, and this egg wrecked 300 of them just by breaking open on them. So let's do some basic logic. If a single egg from this creature can flood entire cities, that tells you a few things. These things were still laying eggs at the time people were documenting them. The offspring would be smaller than the original Ziz, but still way too goddamn big to ignore. And, most importantly, those eggs could still be out there. Now, here's a theory that'll fry your brain a little more. What if creatures like the Thunderbird, Griffin, and Phoenix aren't totally separate legends? What if they're all descendants of Ziz? Cute little fuckers that hatched from these ancient eggs. Picture it like a diluted bloodline. The original Ziz was the sky-dominating apex predator. Its eggs, laid across centuries or even millennia, produced smaller versions. Not weak, not harmless, but scaled down enough to survive in different parts of the world without instantly giving away their existence. Could you imagine trying to shit one of those out? Your ass would be so prolapsed, when you go to take a shit, it would look like a time-lapsed blooming carnation. The griffin, for instance, part lion, part eagle, is often depicted as a guardian of divine treasure in both Greek and Persian mythology. What if it wasn't symbolic? What if that hybrid look came from Ziz blood mixed with some local fauna over centuries? Sex between a lion and Ziz means someone's gonna have scratch marks. Then there's the phoenix, always associated with fire, rebirth, and immortality. But go back far enough and you'll find descriptions of the phoenix that aren't fiery at all. Just fucking massive birds that lived impossibly long lives and disappeared into the sky. And while we're talking crazy shit, let's talk eggs. Because this is where things get scrambled as hell. There are scattered reports, mostly in fringe newspapers and old military documents, about giant eggs being discovered in remote regions. We're talking eggs the size of bathtubs, found in caves, cliff faces, or embedded in sediment. Some were fossilized, others not so much. In one case from the 1960s, a group of hikers in the Andes stumbled across what they believed was a meteorite. But it wasn't metal. It had a shell. Smooth, blackened, and surprisingly warm to the touch. They reported it to local authorities who notified the military. Within 48 hours, the entire site was cordoned off. The hikers were silenced, and the egg was flown out in an unmarked chopper. And then, nothing. Total fucking silence. That story sound familiar? Well, it should, because it's been repeated all over the world. The Australian outback, northern Canada, Mongolia, massive eggs found, reported, and immediately confiscated by governments. Every single time. No official explanations, no follow-up. Oh, fuck no. Just a black bag job and a news blackout. Makes you wonder, how many of these mythological creatures never went extinct, just went underground? Or, more accurately, up into the skies where no one looks long enough to question it. And think about this. If governments know something is still out there, Something with wings big enough to shadow an entire city. They're not going to announce that on the evening news. Shit, they'd classify it, just like they did with UFOs. Just like they're doing with every aerial anomaly that doesn't fit into a military or meteorological explanation, a la New Jersey drones. The sky is the last great unregulated frontier, and creatures like Ziz can use that to their full advantage. So next time someone tells you Ziz is just an old myth, ask them this: why do people on opposite sides of the planet keep seeing the same thing? Why do ancient texts, religious art, and modern sightings all describe a giant bird that controls the sky? And why do its eggs always disappear the moment someone calls the authorities? The answer is pretty fucking simple. They don't want us to know it's still up there. And if it is still up there, then maybe the sky isn't as empty as we pretend it is. So let's take a step back and look at what we've got. We've dug through ancient texts that describe a bird so fucking huge it could black out the sun. A creature tied directly to Leviathan and Behemoth. Biblical beasts that everyone seems to accept as symbolic, even though their descriptions read more like goddamn field reports. We've seen artwork and medieval manuscripts that clearly show people were seeing something fucknormous in the skies. We've got Thunderbird legends from North America that line up almost perfectly with the Ziz, and modern sightings from people who didn't grow up reading the Talmud but somehow describe the exact same beast. Add in the egg stories, giant city-flooding eggs in ancient texts and confiscated bathtub-sized eggshells in modern times, and it starts to look a lot less like mythology and a lot more like suppressed zoology. When you connect the dots, and it's not hard to imagine that Ziz isn't extinct. It's just rare, smart, and maybe even protected by people who don't want us asking too many fucking questions. And here's the part where I challenge you. Yeah, you. Keep your eyes on the skies. If you ever see a bird that looks like it doesn't belong, something fucking massive, silent, gliding above the treetops or the clouds, don't blow it off. Grab a camera, snap some pics, tell somebody. Because if Ziz really is out there, then we're living under a sky we don't fully understand. And if those ancient eggs are still out there too, if little Zizlets are still hatching in hidden valleys, deep forests, and remote mountain ranges, that means the sky monster bloodline hasn't ended. It's still growing. Just remember, one Ziz egg destroyed 60 cities and crushed 300 cedar trees. That was just the egg. Now imagine what the full-grown beast could do if it stretched its wings again. They tried to erase it from history, but history has wings, and sometimes it circles back. If you want to have chicken for dinner, tap that like button and subscribe. That way you won't miss out on more of my fucked up commentary. And besides, I really do appreciate it. Dude, Ziz, ancient myth, forgotten species, or maybe a little natural selection? What do you figure? Let me know down in the comments. And if you're ready to go all in, that join button's got your name on it. For just $2.99, you can have my back in a huge way. Until next time, y'all keep it real, keep it chill, and stay creepy! Catch you on the flip. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. You are the real beast.